Leeds United, as we all know, secured the signing of Harry Wilson on a free transfer the other day, and in spite of the fact that we signed Harry Wilson, we're also reportedly in for Shea Charles and Julian Brandt and probably a wealth of other players. But this is three players that are very, very heavily midfield focused, which means that the club are potentially going to look at moving some midfielders on. Now, in Japan's match versus Sweden at the World Cup last night, Tanaka sent Leeds United a very, very clear message in terms of whether or not he should be the player that leaves Leeds United in the coming weeks. I'm going to get into all that, the way that he played against them, and why Tanaka is potentially the most important player in that midfield on his day in the rest of the video. But before I do, just subscribe to the channel, be quite nice. Thank you very much. Let's get into it. So, Tanaka didn't start Japan's first match of the World Cup, and everyone looked at that and went, "That's a little bit weird." He's been given the number 7 that was normally worn by, I think, Karu Matoma. So what's going on there? Is he out of favour? Has he got an injury? Anything along those lines? But since then, started the second match, has started the third match against Sweden, and genuinely has been an incredible presence in that Japan midfield against Sweden. For a little bit of context, as I have continually mentioned because it's fairly relevant in these situations, I work for DAZN, who broadcast the World Cup in Japan, including on Japan matches, and we run polls throughout the games just to sort of discuss what's going on. With over 60,000 people responding, Tanaka was voted the player of the first half for Japan, getting 86% of the vote, which is frankly insane for a player that didn't score a goal, didn't get an assist, and this was incredibly clear of the nearest alternative candidate. You can tell that by the fact he got 86% of the vote. And this was because he was absolutely everywhere. He was playing some delicious little through balls to create some chances for his team. He was winning the ball all over the pitch. He was using those nimble feet to sort of dribble his way out of danger. And doing all those things that Tanaka does at Leeds United, just on the international stage. And a lot of people, when we talked about Tanaka leaving the Championship, some of the questions were around, does he have it in him to make that step up from Championship to Premier League? Because we signed him from the second tier of German football, which is, in theory, a little bit lower than the Championship. So to go from that to the Championship to the Premier League in the space of a couple of seasons is going to be incredibly difficult. But not only did he do that, not only did he go from playing a level below the Championship to playing in the Championship to playing in the Premier League, but he's now playing at the step above that. He's playing on the biggest stage that there is for his country, and I discussed a little sort of interview that Tanaka did a couple of days ago where sort of he had a chat with DAZN and discussed what drove him, and for the most part it was the fact that he was part of a side that disappointed Japan in the most recent World Cup before this in Qatar because they got knocked out on penalties. Now, however, he seems to have... Hold on, I'm going to do a second take because the baby's woken up. 1 second. So, had to change program and everything to do the second half of this video, and I had done a retake on this bit of the video, but everything went a little bit wrong with my microphone and camera. That's why it's now flipped the other way around, which is always fun and definitely not going to cause any issues right now. But diving into a little bit more on the Tanaka stuff, when he did that interview with DAZN, the underlying factor was, I'm going to avenge the side from Qatar. Whilst he wasn't one of the players that missed a penalty or anything along those lines, he still took it upon himself to spend the last 3 years improving himself, getting to a place where he is happy with the way that he's playing, and forcing his way back into that squad. You got to remember, at the time he was playing for, I believe it was Fortuna Dusseldorf, maybe, in the second tier of German football, which, if you're an international manager, that's not really the first place you're going to look for players, especially when the side that you manage is Japan, and Japan always having a tendency to be fairly good players all across Europe and beyond. And the fact of the matter is, over the past 3 and a bit years, he's gone from relative fringe player that gets brought on in the second half of extra time to being in a league that's potentially worse than the Championship, the second league of Germany, into the Championship, into the Premier League, and now he's starring in the World Cup. And that is the sort of personality that ultimately we need at Leeds United. As much as we consistently say, and it is good that we say this to be clear, but we consistently say side before self. which is fair enough. But if a player is somewhat selfish in their ambitions and have things that they want to do as an individual, then that doesn't harm the side in the slightest. Tanaka wanting to prove himself to the Japan manager to say, look, I'm going to be a part of your side at the World Cup and I will prove to you that I need to be, is ultimately beneficial because he's going to perform week in, week out for Leeds United to make that happen. Similar thing happened with Noah Okafor, and yeah, sure, he only made it in the end because another player dropped out and he's not appeared yet. But one of the reasons that he was shining so brightly for Leeds United last season was the fact that he was trying to force his way into the Switzerland squad, and he did. And whilst the sort of performance from Tanaka with 86% of the vote at halftime, and it's currently the 47th minute, so I can't really give you an idea of what happened at full time. But whilst it might be easy enough to look at that, and you might have heard that snore, that was the cutest thing. Whilst it might be easy enough to look at that and go, yeah, well, it's only Sweden. Sweden aren't the best of sides. Tanaka has just taken on 2 players and then had a shot. Genuinely brilliant stuff. I'm going to give you effectively live updates at this point. Whilst doing it against Sweden might, on the face of it, not look like the most impressive thing, you've got to think about who's in that Sweden team. Lindelof is a very, very experienced player. Yassine Ayari is an incredibly good midfielder who caused a lot of problems for Tunisia. And sure, Tunisia, maybe not the shiniest of names, but they're no scrubs either. And this front line for Sweden as well, that Tanaka is playing a very big role in shutting down, consists of Alexander Isak, who plays for Liverpool, Victor Gyökeres, who plays for Liverpool, Arsenal, that one, sorry. It's currently like 10 past 1 in the morning. I've come off a shift working the game before this, so I'm very tired. And Anthony Elanga, who's been probably Sweden's star player at the World Cup so far. That shows the level that Tanaka is operating at. And the clear message to Leeds United is this one. If anyone is going to make way for Shea Charles, for Julian Brandt, probably not for Harry Wilson, because the player that's making way there is going to be Brendan Aronson. But if anyone's going to make way, Tanaka is making a very, very, very clear point that it's not going to be him. That it is going to be an Ilya Gruev or it's going to be a Sean Longstaff. And if it comes to being in the first 11, it's going to be Anton Stach that has to step aside, or it's going to be Ethan Ampadu. Because the only way that you're going to force your way in there is having fantastic performances. And doing so on the biggest stage possible is ultimately how Tanaka is going to make his voice heard and push his way into that first 11 for next season. Also, quick note, Gabby Gudmundsson also having a very good game. He's taken set pieces for Sweden and they have been very nice. So that's 3 set piece takers for us next season. That's Wilson, that's Stach, that's Gudmundsson, and I'll take that all day long. But yeah, this might have been a somewhat sort of rambly, ravey sort of video that has covered many different things on the way that Tanaka's been playing. But he's having a spectacular game so far. He is continuing to do so into the second half. And I think he has more value to Leeds United as part of the squad than as part of a sale on the balance book. And I really hope we sort of account for that and make the right decision in terms of what we do with our midfield next season. But as always, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours in the comments down below. That'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. That is also hugely appreciated. Pop a like on the video too, all that kind of stuff. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later. And hopefully the audio doesn't break this time, and hopefully the end of this match continues to be entertaining. Toodaloo.